Hey, congrats! You just had a baby. Now what?
Let's get into that. Hey, I'm Andrew Warnock.
I'm Nathan Warnock.
And you're joining us for Family Friday on the Marriage by Design podcast. Family Friday is a show where we get to talk to you about parenting and God's design for parenting, as well as how we raise our kids.
That's great. So this month, we're going to be going through the stages of parenting. So years ago, the pastor of our church gave a message on the different stages of parenting that really got us thinking about what does it mean to parent at each of these different stages? Because you don't have to have children to know the way that you raise a 3-year-old is probably different from the way you raise a 13-year-old. But how do those stages break up, and how should our parenting transition between them?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be our challenge for this month. So today, specifically, we're going to be talking about birth to 5 years old. And I know that covers a huge range of development in children.
Between 0 and 5.
Totally.
Yeah.
And, certainly there's going to be some of the things when we might talk about 4 and 5-year-olds that certainly apply to 6 and 7-year-olds. But we're just going to kind of try and do the hard breaks there. Now, if you watched our Family Fridays from last month, you know that our oldest just turned 10. So there is certainly going to be stages of parenting that we have not experienced for ourselves yet. Those will be coming later in the month, and we will have some special guests who have been through that stage to talk about those with us.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do today, we're going to kind of talk about what do we think about that 0 to 5-year-old range. What are some challenges we found to be specific to that? What guidance can we find in the Bible with regards to those stages of parenting, and kind of go from there. But before we do that, I wanted to just share maybe a minute our heart on parenting generally and what I believe the Bible teaches about parenting. So for Andrea and I think if we were to sum up our mission for parenting, it would have to start and end with the word intentional. That's right. We really feel like when it comes to parenting, you're going to have a really hard time being a successful parent if you're not intentional in what you're doing. And that may sound like, well, duh, you got to think about what you're doing. But I'm not talking about thinking about what you're doing. I'm talking about intentionally mapping out the things that you do as a parent.
Yep.
Right. So early on, Andrea and I kind of locked into that, and then we came across and then sort of locked in on the intentionality, Proverbs 22:6, which says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, even when he's old, he will not depart from it." Now, a lot of people take that verse as a promise that if you raise your children in a godly way, guaranteed they're going to grow up to be a godly adult.
But we've seen tons of examples that that's not.
Right. If you want an example of that, just scroll back in the Marriage Monday playlist to our story. Because I was certainly raised by my parents to be a God-honoring young man, to live according to God's principles, and I chose not to do that as a 20-something up into my late 20s. But that's a misunderstanding of what this verse really means. When it says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, even when he's old, he will not depart from it," what that's saying is the training you've given them, they won't depart from it, meaning they can't unlearn something you've taught them. Right? So maybe in modern parlance, a better way of saying that is train up a child in the way he should go, even when he's old, it will not depart from him.
Yeah.
Now that's really what this verse is saying, is he will not depart from the knowledge. Right? And I can testify firsthand to that. If you heard our story, when I kind of came to the end of myself during the affair that I was having, the thing that kept coming back to me really was a confirmation of this verse, even though I didn't know it. It was the things I had been raised to know are right and wrong, and knowing that the thing that I was doing was wrong. And I just could not get past that, knowing that the thing I was about to do, the thing I had been doing, and the thing I was considering doing and leaving my family for somebody else, ultimately I knew it was wrong. And I knew I wouldn't be able to live with myself knowing I had done something that glaringly, blatantly wrong. Well, where did I learn that? Right? I learned that as I was being raised by my parents. They trained me up in the way I should go. I chose a different route, but the knowledge and the training they gave me did not depart from me. And the Holy Spirit really used that to great effect when he needed me to turn around before I made that ultimate decision. So I hope that's just a story, an analogy of how that works out, right? So when you hear that verse, don't think about, oh, if we raise our children going to church, they're never going to make any bad decisions. What it does mean is if you're intentional in raising your children in the way they should go according to God's design, then throughout their entirety of their lives, that training will never leave them.
Right.
Great. So, babe,
yes.
Let's talk about the 0 to 5 range. So, babe, why don't you start by just telling us, what do you think of this 0 to 5 range? What are some thoughts that you have?
Sure.
Then after that, I'll jump in where I can, and then we'll talk about some challenges after that.
The 0 to 5 range is all encompassing, I feel like. So, of course, when they're babies, you are their life, literally. Their life is sustained because of you. So it's so all-encompassing as babies, and then you get to, those toddler stages where they're wanting maybe more independence than they actually have, or the more independence than is good for them. But still, you are their world, you are their emotional support and their physical support. You are everything to them.
Yeah.
And so it's very all-encompassing, and they're starting to, at that stage, really realize that they're their own human being, and they have their own opinions and thoughts, and they want to express those, and they express them fully and with gusto.
Yep.
So
challenge the boundaries.
Yeah, they're wanting to figure out what their boundaries are and challenge those, and they're learning about just themselves too. So, but even still, you are everything to them, and so so you're, as a parent, I feel like this 0 to 5, of course less so as it gets closer to 5, but you're just, their life is so wrapped up and entwined with yours. So, and that's really a fun thing too, because as we've seen, we kind of get a glimpse into the older stages because we have one child who's so much older than the other ones. And so, at 10, it's not so all encompassing, and he thinks other people are cool too, like his friends. But at 0 to 5, you're like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. So
it's fun too to have one that's so much older, and we can see the differences and really appreciate those things in 0 to 5.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, it's so sweet that I am everything to them, and I'm who they want to be with all the time, and all those sorts of things too. But I would say 0 to 5 is so all-encompassing, so intertwined with your own life, and really just they're it's a lot.
Yeah, I think this is a challenging section of parenting for me, for odd ways, because if you've had an infant before, you may think, well, that's they don't really do much, right? I mean, you pick them up and you take them wherever you want them to go, and you set them down, and maybe you had one that just likes to sit and hang out. We've finally had one of those in our own family, but you may have a child that just cries all the time. We've had one of those too. So it's a difficult time in that you don't know. Right. I mean, all of a sudden you go from this child that's in your womb, very much a living child, but an unknown quantity, and all of a sudden they're here and they need food and they need changed and they might be crying and you don't know why, and your heart breaks because you don't know why they're crying, and you're trying different things and nothing's working, and you're getting frustrated and you're just tired of them crying and you're not getting sleep. And I mean, it can be a challenging time for sure. So for me, as I think about just like the stages of parenting in general, for me this is definitely on the more challenging side, and then kind of the next stage after 5 sort of goes up, and then perhaps depending on the child, maybe the teenage years go down or up, and then the parenting adult years hopefully go up after that. So for me, as I think about this is I think a challenging time.
Sure.
In parenting for a number of reasons.
Sure. Right.
But the other thing is, nothing beats holding a baby, right? I mean, a little tiny baby that just wants to sit there and lay its head on your shoulder, or smile and coo, and man, nothing beats that, right? That's heavenly to see a little baby and little baby laughter. And so maybe for me this is just like the bipolar stage of parenting, right? Where there's like,
I can see that
some of the things I dislike the most about parenting are in the 0 to 5 range, and some of the things I love the most about parenting are in the 0 to 5 range.
Yeah, I would
so maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just struggling with the bipolarness of parenting in the 0 to 5 year old range.
Yep.
So as we think about that range, and maybe you're somebody that's been through it, and if you have some great things to share, I'd love you to share those. Maybe you're about to have a child. Maybe you've had, a child recently, and you're trying to get a look at what lays ahead. So what we'd like to do is present some challenges that are real challenges that we've seen either ourselves or with friends of ours or other people in our sphere of influence, and talk a little bit about how we can overcome those challenges. Maybe scripture speaks specifically on them, or maybe there's some practical things that can be done to overcome those challenges. So, babe, what's one first challenge maybe you want to present?
In this range, I would always think that the challenge of those toddler years where, they throw fits over the fact that my brother texted me and said that his son threw a 45-minute fit about the fact that my brother had flushed the toilet instead of his son. Who knows why? Why did it have to be? Why do you care about flushing the toilet? Why do you care? Why does it have to be 45 minutes? So one of the challenges of the toddler years is these big fits that they have, and the heightened emotions that they have, and about a lot of things that are just like eye-rollingly dumb, and it just is what they are. And so a challenge for me for sure is not getting involved in that emotionally. So I can get really frustrated that my toddler is acting that way because it's annoying, or I'm like, this is so dumb, can we get over this? Or they're not able to they're either choosing or not able to communicate what's going on. So I think one of the challenges is not getting involved emotionally in that, and probably not being empathetic in times where I should be empathetic, because they're out of control too. Like they're out of control. It's not like they're trying to be a pain in the rear. They're just figuring themselves out, and so a challenge can definitely be like not getting angry, staying calm in those years.
Yeah, I mean, I would totally agree with that, and I would say, and maybe this sounds contradictory to that, but I don't mean it to. But for me, I think part of it is choosing to get invested in their emotions, because for me, it can be easy for me to go like, hey, you want to cry about it? Go to your room and I'll see you in 45 minutes when you're done crying, because I don't really care to hear you're crying. Right? And that sounds super callous, and to some degree I think it is. I mean, part of it is like that defense mechanism of, okay, I don't want to start freaking out and getting mad and getting emotionally crazy because that's not going to help anything. But the other side of that is, I do think that there is, I'm not even sure a lot of times the toddler knows all of the things that they're feeling right in that moment. And so
yes, totally.
Being able to take a vested interest in, even if it just means you just sit and hold them for a minute. And I'm not talking about, if your child's like kicking holes in the wall, or, at some point having an emotional breakdown becomes an issue of discipline that we'll talk about in a little bit. But I'm just talking about your child you flush the toilet and they're mad about it and they're crying and they're screaming and they're upset, but they're not being destructive or hurting other people. They're just out of control, upset in the moment. Being able to just try and connect with them at an emotional level, I think is an important thing. And I think it sets a foundation for something you can build on later. I don't know about you, but sometimes the Lord connects with me emotionally when I'm having an adult tantrum. And I'm out of control in the way that I'm thinking about a situation or the way that I'm acting. Maybe it's internally, maybe it's not internally. And the Lord doesn't just tell me to go sit in my room and he'll be with me when I calm down. Right? He meets with me in those emotionally crazy places. And I think we can set a good foundation even for our young children by not emotionally jumping in the fray with them, but by taking a vested interest in recognizing they're having an emotion and trying to help bring the plane in for a landing.
And I'll tell you this story and preface it with, this is not always how I handle tantrums. I can definitely get frustrated with along with the child and yell sometimes, and that's not right. But the other day, Riker was having a tantrum about who knows what, and it was on, and it was in the middle of the living room. And quite honestly, there becomes for me a level of noise where I just can't take it anymore, and I hit that point. And so I said to him, because a lot of times with tantrums, I kind of just, it depends upon the moment, but a lot of times I can just let them run it out because it's not going to last too long. But anyway, this was lasting a long time, and I was no longer able to just let him run it out in the middle of the living room. My meter for the noise level was topped out. So I said to him, Riker, you can either go to your room and finish crying, or would you like a hug? You decide. And it is kind of hard to talk to them when they're having a tantrum, but he heard me and he just kept crying. And I said, a few times, you have two choices. Would you like a hug or whatever? And finally, I just decided I'm going to make the decision for him, and I'm going to hug him. And if he keeps, if he flails and throws a tantrum or whatever, I'm just going to calmly walk him to his room, put him in his room, and say, I tried. I'm going to turn into a poor example if I continue to allow this noise level. Right here. So anyway, I just scooped him up and gave him a hug and just told him, just take a deep breath. And and that worked in that moment. Sometimes that doesn't, but a lot of times just having that connection works for him, but it also works for me, because having that connection with him then kind of melts my heart a little bit and helps me to empathize with him and not feel what he's feeling, but at least try to relate to him a little bit. And then so that time it was good, because my heart was softened in that moment where we hugged, and I said, just take a deep breath. It's okay. Are you mad? Whatever. And then he was done with it. So he didn't have to go to his room. He didn't have to continue throwing the tantrum and all that. So, that's a lot of times the better way to handle a tantrum. Is to maybe let it run a little bit, but then just try to make that connection.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
What other things do you see as
Yeah,
challenges
so,
in that age?
Yep. So another challenge that I would raise is, what do we do about technology at this age?
Yeah.
Because not the 0 to 3 necessarily, although Riker's about to turn 3 here pretty quick, and he definitely is into watching shows and
Sure.
that sort of thing if he's given time to do it. So how do we set a foundation right now when our kids are young that we can build on with regards to technology?
Yeah. So some of this is recommendations from medical professionals, but really 0 to 2 children shouldn't really have technology. So they shouldn't really be watching TV, and definitely shouldn't be having any, technology that they're just zoning out in front of, like iPads and stuff like that.
Yeah, and if I can just jump in, I will post up on our Facebook page an audio clip of a doctor that we listened to that's really good. That
Yeah,
you can
she's
access.
done a ton of research into the topic of technology with children and the effects and all that sort of thing. And so
Yeah, she's great.
I strongly encourage you to listen to it. It's great.
Yep, so that'll be up on our Facebook page, so go look for that.
So yeah, some of our opinions are definitely shaped by medical advice. But 0 to 2, really no technology. We do a Sunday movie night
as a family.
So our whole family, we watch some, usually Disney movie or whatever. And with our young kids, like under 2 or 2 and under, we don't like hide them away so that they can't see it. But they're really not interested in it. So mostly they're playing, and they'll catch some of it a little bit. But we find that generally our children aren't interested in TV until like 2.5, closer to 3. But anyway, as far as technology, we are super limited. They don't have any devices of their own.
Certainly not at this age.
Yeah, they don't have devices of their own. They're never allowed on our phones unless we're right there, like looking at something specific. But that's like a YouTube video of what a mountain lion sounds like. My 5-year-old and I were doing that the other day. But they don't ever have a device alone.
Yeah.
And they don't have devices of their own. And their TV time is really limited to our Sunday movie nights and maybe 20 or 30 minutes here and there.
Yeah.
But that's pretty rare.
Yeah, and I would just challenge you, if I could, to have a 0 tolerance policy with regards to letting your kids, particularly at the 3, 4, 5, but up into the 10, 11, 12 range, and we'll cover this again, I'm sure, next week, but letting them have any internet connected device, period. There are, let's just be real, there are people out there that want to take advantage of our children. That's real. We got to be honest about it. And that's the way they're doing it. And you might think, oh, it's just the YouTube Kids app. Well, you Google that at some point, YouTube Kids app and child predator, and see the type of stuff that sneaks onto YouTube Kids that they don't catch, and we got to just be super careful of that kind of stuff. The other thing is there's all kinds of words that are child friendly that if you typo them turn into not child friendly things. So when it comes to the internet, there just can be none of it unless you're right there.
We even go so far as to, we don't allow our children to be on a device that their friend has either, with internet connection or whatever. I don't know what they're doing on it. I don't know what they have access to, so.
Right, and that definitely bleeds over into next week, so we'll talk more about that.
But their job is to play.
Right.
Really. 0 to 5, their job is to play. And especially if they don't have technology very often, they get really good at playing and their imaginations go wild, and it's really fun to see. And they have more opportunity as siblings to develop those relationships too.
So what would you say, babe, to someone that says, I'm concerned because my son likes to play with dollies? Or, I suppose it's probably even still more socially acceptable for a girl that likes to play with dump trucks or whatever that's in the 0 to 5 range.
Let him.
Right.
Let him.
Don't make a big deal about it.
No.
I mean, you make it a big deal by making it a big deal.
Our son, our Riker, who's 2, he has his older sister. Then they're great friends. And, well, Ryan likes to dress up in princess dresses, so he likes to dress up in princess dresses. And it's hilarious. And he doesn't know that it's really a girl thing. And Ryan loves to play with superheroes. And why does it have to... I don't know why that's designated as like a boy thing. But she likes to do dude things with Jackson because it's fun. So... we don't get uptight about any of that sort of stuff.
No.
Especially in the 0 to 5 range. They're just playing.
Yeah, and it really does bother me and I'm happy to admit it's usually the dads that I see doing this. But, we just, at that age, the 0 to 5, what you said I thought was so good. Their function is to be playing. Specifically playing with others as much as possible, although certainly playing by themselves is a good skill to learn at this point. But yeah, I mean, I just don't. I mean, when we start making a big deal about those things, our kids start, you can start laying a foundation for a child that feels like they need to act a certain way in order to get your approval, which you definitely do not want to start a child down that road. Or you just start putting pressure on them to look like they're acting a certain way.
Yeah. And don't go the other way either. Don't force them into, I want to be inclusive or whatever. So my little boy is going to play with.
Let them play with what they want to play with.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't go hard on either side.
Totally.
I would say with babies, a challenge can be maybe connecting with them.
I was going to ask you about that.
Depending upon it, everybody is different, and so if you have maybe you're a new mom or not, but you have a baby and you're just struggling to connect and feel this, what you feel like should be this great love for them, and just all of a sudden when they're born you should just love them and want to be around them all the time. If that's not you, that's okay. I struggled with that connection with Jackson for 2 years or more. And I kind of did the fake it till you make it. I didn't want him to feel like that.
Sure.
And it's not that I didn't love him. I just didn't have that feeling that I thought I should feel. Like, I didn't have that mom feeling. I didn't have that ooey-gooey-ness about him. I don't know how to explain it very well, but if you don't have that and you're a new mom, that's okay. If you feel like this is a postpartum depression issue, or if this is becoming something like you're having thoughts of, I want to hurt my child or yourself, or you're really struggling to care. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe it's not like I want to hurt them, but you're struggling to even care for them. Definitely get help for that, because it's important. It's important that you are healthy, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, all those ways that you're healthy, so that you can take care of your child well.
Yeah. And
so that you can get to that point where maybe you need to fake it till you make it, but you're not even. I mean, when you're not healthy, and I'm not trying to say that as a judging thing, when you have something that you maybe need to work out in that area, then it's hard to even get to the point of faking it till you make it. So definitely no judgment on that. That is something that's so worth pursuing, getting help and hopefully moving past that.
Yeah, and that getting help may include medical help. I mean, particularly if you've had a baby and you're struggling with a lot of this. There's nothing in this world I'm more in awe of from an earthly standpoint than women that have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've seen all that goes on during that process 4 times, and every time it's mind-bending to me that a woman can have a human being out of their vagina and the next day they're ready to get up and go home. Like, that's mind-blowing to me. So if you're struggling with some of those postpartum baby blues or depression afterwards, seek medical help too, because there may be a chemical situation or a medical situation that's going on there too. And we should never be shaming people for something medical like that that's going on, or making you feel like, oh, you just got to buck up and get over it.
No, and if it's just that, hey, I feel okay, but I just don't have what I think I should have, don't compare yourself to others. Don't judge yourself. Give it time. Ask the Lord to meet you. Ask the Lord to give you those feelings. But in the meantime, love out of choice and not out of feeling.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Great. So for me, the last challenge, and maybe this is this is really an encouragement, particularly for husbands, is so often in the 0 to 5 range, the biggest challenge of raising your children really has nothing to do with your children. It's how do I best sow into my wife during this time. And this, I know, is Family Friday, and so we may have some dads listening or moms listening that are raising their children on their own. And you know what? You're never alone, right? You've got the God of the universe on your side, strengthening, empowering you, giving you the knowledge and discernment that you need to raise your kids. But for me as a father, what I've realized about this time is the biggest way I can help a lot of times raising our 0 to 5-year-olds is to make sure that Andrea is getting the support and the things that she needs. Because in our home, Andrea stays home and raises our kids, but she didn't always do that, and this didn't change when she wasn't doing that. I mean, the reality of the matter is oftentimes, this was certainly the case with us, and we've seen it with other couples as well, where oftentimes the emotional drain of raising a 0 to 5-year-old is more heavily borne by the mom than by the dad. Mm-hmm. And so for us as men, a big part of our responsibility is to come alongside our wives and help raise their arms as we both struggle through what it looks like to raise a 0 to 5-year-old. And that looks differently for everybody, but this ties into that intentionality piece, right? Whether it's, okay, when the baby gets up at night, do you both get up? Does only one person get up? You know, can I do something before I go to bed to prepare for those midnight feedings? If the baby's on formula, then, you know, how do we want to divide up who's getting up, who's not getting up? You know, those are the kinds of things that we can take charge of as husbands to help say, okay, babe, what can I do? Let's have a plan so that I can intentionally love on you during this time. Mm-hmm. And that's a challenge for guys to take that initiative to do that.
That's great.
Yep.
I wanted to just talk about a couple Bible verses with that. So just one of encouragement, which is Lamentations 3, 22 and 23. It says, the Lord's loving kindness indeed never ceases, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And sometimes this is what I live on when I feel like I'm totally emptied out. So his loving kindness never cease. His compassions never fail. They're new every morning. And thank goodness there's an end to every day, and there's a beginning of every new day. So I know that maybe this day was really crappy, and it's gonna end. And then I get to start over tomorrow, and his mercies are new every morning.
That's great.
And for that I'm so grateful. And then Hebrews 12:11 says all discipline. So in the 0 to 5, you're starting, especially that 1.5 to 5, you're really setting up the discipline. Yeah. You're really marking your territory and their territory. and really driving that discipline stake in the ground. And so it says, all discipline for the moment seems not to be joyful, and holy cow, it is not joyful, but sorrowful. Yet those who have been trained by it afterward, it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness. And and I think about how disciplining my children is not fun. I would so much rather not have to have that piece of the parenting puzzle. I would a lot of times rather just roll my eyes and move on when they need discipline. But there's fruit that comes from discipline, and sometimes we're not going to see it right away. A lot of times in this 0 to 5 range, you're not going to see the fruit of your discipline right away. But even still, it's so important to remain consistent. It's so important to love hard, or love a lot, and discipline probably a lot. But the peaceful fruit that it produces maybe later on down the road is so worth it. And so just some encouragement with that too. It's not joyful, it's sorrowful, it's not fun, it's really hard, but so worth it.
Yeah, that's great. So that's a great launch right into what we want to talk about next, which is one thing that we want to talk about for each stage of parenting is what's 1 or 2 things that we do during this stage to begin preparing our children for the next stage. Right? Because it comes back to that intentionality. You want to be training your kids now for the future, right? If you're always trying to train your kids for today, they're always going to be behind, right? We want to be training our kids for the next stage of their life now. So maybe just 1 or 2 things that you think of for that. And for me, you set it up perfectly for me. For me, it really was discipline. In this 0 to 5 range, our kids they're growing at such a rapid pace that they quickly reach a place where, okay, I know I'm an independent person where I can walk over there and slug my sister if I want to. I have the ability to do that. So why not do it? Right? And that really sums up, I think, what a lot of people would say is the toddler kind of terrible 2s, 3s range, right? Where you say, hey, don't go over there. And it's like the only thing in the world they can think of is going over there. And what's going to happen if I go over there? And so for us, part of what I'm trying to set my 0 to 5-year-old up for the next stage, the 6 to 12-year-old phase, is we are a family of structure. The world around us is a world of structure. The Lord that we worship is a God of structure. Structure is a consistency throughout all of our lives. It changes the way it looks as we get older, but structure, discipline, consequences, those are things we must intentionally think about as human beings, and helping the 0 to 5-year-old child understand that. And it reminded me of a verse in Proverbs 13. It's Proverbs 13:24, and it says, controversially, I suppose, in some circles, whoever spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is diligent to discipline him. Regardless of what you think about spanking or not spanking, or any kind of that type of corporal punishment, the point of that verse is discipline must hurt the child.
And
right?
Not necessarily physically.
No, not necessarily physically, but it must hurt, right? And we all understand as we get older, different things hurt, right? That's why you discipline a 13-year-old different than you discipline a 3-year-old. But for us, the point is that we're helping our children to understand you have a decision to make, and that decision has consequences. And so for us, being clear with our children, with Riker and our other 2 kids that were at that phase, to say, hey, Riker, if you do this thing, then right now you have a choice. You can choose to be obedient and not do this thing I've asked you not to do, or do this thing I've asked you to do, and there will be great consequences. Or you can choose disobedience, and then this will be your consequence. And when you've set that up ahead of time as a parent, it helps to take some of the emotion out of it, because you've given them a choice, and then a clear choice. And then if they choose disobedience, if they choose wrong, then you're able to go, I'm sorry, I don't want to have to do this, but you've made a choice knowing what the consequence would be, and now we need to give you the discipline.
Mm-hmm.
You quoted a saying from our pastor last couple weeks ago that says, what we want with discipline is tons of love, tons of discipline, consistency throughout.
Yep.
And that's really what I think we can do at this age to prepare them for the next stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think another way to prepare them for the next stage is with responsibility. So this happens, it starts young in our house and it starts small, but as our children grow older, we expect them to take on more responsibility. And so when our kids hit an age where we feel like they can start doing a few things, it starts small. It might be, I want you to put these 2 pieces of silverware from dinner into the dishwasher, and so, yeah, it starts small. And then, but their responsibilities grow as they get older, and at this 0 to 5 range, they still need a lot of help with that. So our daughter, who just turned 5, is finally at the stage where we can tell her, Ryan, we need you to go clean up the playroom. And she may complain a lot about that, but she pretty much knows now how to clean it up by herself.
Yeah.
We've been working with her on cleaning up the playroom for 3 years. So, when she's younger, it's like, hey, these books that are all right here, I need you to just focus on these books and pick them up and put them into this cubby. It really, okay, so now we've gotten that done. Now I need you to take these dollies over here and pick up these 3 dollies and that one that's over there and put them in. So it's a lot of guidance at first, and then moves on to less guidance over time. So setting up our children with responsibilities young that grow as they grow older is really important, and it's a lot of work. So a lot of times it feels like I could just do it faster, but that's not what I'm training my children for. I'm training my children to take responsibility and to be able to do things on their own, even if they're not done very well. Maybe they are or aren't trying to do them well, but especially when they are trying to do it well, it's just, they're young, so they don't say anything to them.
Yeah, that's critically important.
So
not to undermine them like that.
So for example, my son, our oldest, Jackson, who's 10, we sometimes have him clean the bathroom, and it is nowhere near the way I would clean the bathroom, but I would never tell him that because he is trying, and hey, the bathroom's cleaner than it was. Right. So that's better than me doing it because I didn't have time at the time or whatever. So
as long as he's being diligent.
Right. Diligence is important. Right. Yeah. So starting off with those small responsibilities and teaching them well, so that they can end up, really taking those on themselves is important at this stage.
Yeah.
In preparing them for the next stage and more responsibilities and that sort of thing.
No doubt. Mm-hmm. Okay, last thing then that we want to talk about for this video is just one thing that we would say to really cherish about this stage of life. So often we get caught up, it's a human thing, in man, I just can't wait until something in the future. I just can't wait until my kids get this age. Man, it'll be so much easier when my kids are this age. It'll be so much easier in my life when I get this promotion, or after we're married, things will be so much easier. And we spend so much time looking forward to the future that we don't spend any time really cherishing the present. Yeah. And the present is really a gift from God. That's why they call it
You're
the
so
present.
Cheesy. You're so cheesy. There's so many things to cherish from this stage. I'm struggling to land on one, but one thing I would say is kind of what I said earlier. Their lives are so wrapped up in yours, and that can be a challenge, but it is such a thing to cherish too, because they're so all about you, and they just want to play with you. They want you to play with them, and they love the things that you say, and they hang on to compliments that you give them and accolades, and that's something that you should do a lot for your kids. is compliment them and speak life into them and love them well with your words. And this is a stage where they don't second guess it. They believe it. And I love that about this stage. They're so all about you as their parent, and unfortunately that means too you can hurt them with sharp words or the things that you say. But gosh, it's amazing to have them just be so in love with you, and you're their world.
Right. For me, much less esoteric and overarching than that one. For me, the thing I cherish the most about this age is when our kids mispronounce words. That's it's my favorite. Right? I mean, Riker right now has a book that he really likes, and in the book, now you may know of this book. It's that classic literature, Polar Bear, what do you hear? And there's a part in that where the zebra hears a boa constrictor. Well, we've read this book to him so many times that I just turn the pages. I don't say a word, and he cannot read yet. He's 2. But I just turn the pages, and he will, by memory, quote every single line in that book. Sure. And so he gets to that part, and he says, "Zebra, zebra, what do you hear? I hear a boa constrictor hissing in my ear." And then you turn the page, and it's, "Boa constrictor, what do you hear?" And it is the cutest doggone thing, right? And each of our kids have had that, right? Somebody always put "do" on the end of stuff. So Ryan would
bagel.
Do you want a donut? A donut do. Do you want a bagel? A bagel do.
No, it was a baggy do.
A baggy do, right? I mean, that kind of stuff is adorable.
She did.
To me.
She put like "do" or "a do" on the end of most
and it's cute. And look at it. Maybe you've got a child that does that and it freaks you out because you think they're never going to talk.
Oh no.
Deep breaths, right? They all grow out of it. And this is what I'm talking about. Then you're going to be sitting there when they're 7 or 8 and you're going to go, "Oh man, I wish you would call it a boa constrictor."
Yeah.
Or it's the cutest thing.
Yogurt was gua for Jackson for a long time.
And we cherish these things. Yes. So totally cherish those little coming of age. 0 to 5 range. So.
Yep, that's great.
Awesome.
So next week on this show, we're talking about the 6 to 12 range.
Yep. So
and then so we'll be talking a lot about Jackson probably.
For sure.
And then after that, we talk about the 13 to 18 range, which we'll have some guests for, and then
adults,
and then adult children, which again we'll have guests for because we've never been in that stage.
That's right. We'll be learning right along with y'all, so that'll be great.
Yep.
Awesome, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. If you have questions about parenting in the 0 to 5 range, we have taken just a small fraction of the things that we've learned over the years, particularly in the area of mothering infants. I know we didn't get a chance to talk a ton about that. Andrea is a wealth of knowledge in that area. So if you have questions, please email us. Find us on Instagram or Facebook, guys. All the links and all that are at the end of this video. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We would love to walk beside you and help you through that. Guys, until then, remember God's for our families, and He's for us as parents. Go and have a great weekend. See y'all.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.